Welcome back to JTV News. Discussions about the national health insurance have been prevalent around the Virgin Islands and remains topical on both traditional and new media sources. Some local entrepreneurs say they are concerned that the mandatory healthcare program may negatively impact the sustainability of their businesses. And Chairman of the BVI Chamber of Commerce and Hotel Association, Louis Potter, spoke to JTV News about some of the main concerns being raised by business owners about the NHI plan.
If you were to pinpoint a few of the issues that you consider to be the main ones that have been put forward so far, whether in conversations or otherwise from business operators, business owners, what would you say those would be?
As I understand, but the issues that have been coming up more is issues of whether or not you can use, whether you must use the national health insurance solely, whether it is like your first line and then you can also have a backup policy. Another issue is whether or not a person in going overseas must utilize or must get permission, and how long will it take to get a permission? Those kind of issues, and I believe that once the national health insurance people have a chance to answer those questions, and people see the thing operating, I believe those questions will be or could be answered really.
Do you get a sense that most business operators, or at least some of them at least by now, have an appreciation for the NHI and see it as something that can benefit their employees?
Benefit the employees, I think most people have the concept that the NHI will be a benefit. But until it's operational, there will always be questions, because there are people who will adopt and raise questions in a way more in a sort of inquiry way, so until it's operational, many of the questions will still be out there, and there will always be the challenge of trying to get more and more questions answered.
The BVI CCHA chairman says the association will be working with the NHI implementation team to address the concerns raised by the business community about NHI.
And we are aware that members of the business community do have some questions. We are aware that there's some things that need to be explained. We are aware that there are some misunderstandings. And we're going to be working with the NHI implementers and the business community to ensure that all the questions are answered and that there's a full explanation and understanding of all the issues such as as one talk show host called it, who are the carriers of the scheme. The question is, who are the reinsurers? My understanding is that there will be a program whereby the NHI is fully reinsured. In addition to that, the whole question of whether or not you can use your old insurance, or whether you must use NHI. As I understand it, we'll be seeking to ensure that those questions are fully answered.
Health Minister Ronnie Skelton recently refuted claims made by private insurance companies that the NHI is not economically viable in its present form. Minister Skelton used data from the 2012 NHI Financial Model Report done by the Health Economics Unit at UWI to show that the annual revenue from NHI will be $74,308,000. That figure surpasses the BVI's annual healthcare expenditures of $70,788,000 in the initial stage. Government is projected to contribute some 53% of direct contributions to the NHI. Head of the Virgin Islands Studies Institute at the HLSCC, Dr. Angel Smith, and Dr. Kathy Smith of the Association for the Preservation of Virgin Islands Heritage have been unearthing more tangible historical evidence that would increase awareness about the life of former enslaved and liberated Africans in the Virgin Islands. The local researchers are working along with the St. George's Anglican Church to restore the African burial ground next to the St. Philip's Church in Kingston. Technical experts from Bateman Civil Survey out of St. Croix are using ground-penetrating radar to conduct geophysical investigation at the Kingston site, Great Thatch Island, and the Quaker Burial Ground in Fat Hogs Bay. Sean Rose has more.
Following the abolition of the slave trade in 1807, the British Navy liberated Africans from slaving vessels sailing in British waters. Some were brought to Tortola and were given plots of land sponsored by the British government in 1831. They joined the Kingston community of freed Africans, which grew to almost 300 within the first year. St. Philip's Anglican Church and the school was constructed to serve some of their needs. Nothing remains of the many homes that were originally built here at Kingston. The church walls, the altar, and graveyard still make for an interesting visit though. The red bricks that show through the plaster are a clear reminder of the plantation era, as they were brought in ballast in the holds of the ships that carried the sugar and other produce from the islands back to England. I have with me Dr. Kathy Smith.
I'm representing the Association for the Preservation of Virgin Islands Heritage, and we are working collaboratively with St. George's Church in order to restore the African burial ground, which was a part of the church. To start with, we are almost completing the wall, which was intended to enclose the structure, but was done in a way that was very authentic to the actual structure. The choice of materials had to be very carefully decided upon in terms of reflecting what was used on the original structure that we see behind us here. We are now in the process of beginning looking at parking and the other restoration features of the burial ground, which is all meant to restore the sacredness and the site as an actual burial ground for those who are here, and these people were unnamed and unmarked. So we are looking at benches and stone markers with their names and a memorial. But before we did any of that, including the parking, we definitely had to identify where the sites were, where the burials were. So as a matter of fact, this is also being done with the company who is here with us, Mr. Crickle beside me, at the old prison. We just came from the old prison we were able to identify where the burials were inside the prison, and that was pretty good. And we are, after this project, headed to what was popularly known as the Quaker Burial Ground, or in other words, Planter Burial Ground, for Bezalel Hodge, possibly and probably, and we're heading there to identify the burials there as well.
Where is this one located?
This one is located in Fat Hogs Bay. Yeah. And standing next to me is Mr. Dave Crickle of Bateman Civil Survey Company out of St. Croix, who will let us know exactly how this technology works.
We conducted a geophysical investigation utilizing ground-penetrating radar, commonly referred to as GPR, basically just the initials for short. And what it does, it has an antenna mounted on a cart. It's a four-wheel cart, looks like a lawnmower if you were to see one. And you push it along and it scans the surface. And the antenna rapid fires electronic pulses into the soil and penetrates through the soil. And what you look for in a situation like this is you have the natural soil that is yet to be disturbed, and it is more compact. And the burial sites, the grave sites, due to the excavation, will not be as compact. So as you scan across the surface, we grid the area. We go latitude and longitude to create a grid across the area. And as you scan, you will see the areas of excavation. You will be going across compact soil, and then you'll see the loosened porous soil where there's been activity, where there's been excavation. And you can actually see as it penetrates down the perimeter of the grave, the width and the depth. We found, I believe, 30 graves. This is what we found
alone,
in this area alone, yes. I think the final count was 30 graves. They are marked by the pink flags, and most of the information agreed with where they were suspected to be.
Now, Kathy, tell me about the other sites.
On Tuesday, They will be headed over with Dr. Angel Smith, Director at Virgin Islands Studies Institute at the college, to Great Thatch Island. And as we already know, at the top of the island, we find the foundations of the entire village. And at the flat where I think we'll be headed on Tuesday would be the customs house, burial ground, and other things. So it's going to be very interesting to go over there and note that as well, because that's a project that's coming up as well. Yeah, I just want to mention that the persons buried here were not enslaved except on the ships. And as soon as they landed on Tortola, they were then free people. So this is actually and was established as a free village in 1831. The structure at the back dates back to 1840.
Very appropriate intervention. In fact, some history I read a while ago did indicate that, and I'm happy you can validate that. So our next step is Great Thatch Island to see what we find over there.
And next week, we will bring you more on this heritage exploration to show you what the teams discovered on Great Thatch Island.